Hey, my English 102 students. So I'm sorry I missed the recap from last Thursday, so we're going to cover some of that today. We're going to have two recaps today. One is for scholarly sources and finding those with Heartland Library, and the other is talking a bit about presentations. So with our scholarly sources, first thing to be sure of is that you are using peer-reviewed sources. And when we're talking peer review, that is specific to the journal or academic organization that's producing that. And with peer review, remember, as we talked about on Thursday, that these are articles that have gone through a couple of years of research. They've been sent to a journal article and then reviewed by two other academic scholars in the field who have basically checked to make sure that this article meets this academic standards of that field. And this is why peer-reviewed scholarly sources are considered pretty much the gold standard in reliability. This is not to say they are perfect. This is not to say that every academic article proves to be accurate in the future. But what it does do is give a lot more checks and balances. And so this is why I require you to have academic articles in your Project 2 papers, in your project papers for English 102. Now, something to bear in mind is that there are some journals out there that will appear academic, but in reality are more pay-to-play or more of a vanity journal. And so if you have any doubt about whether or not a journal is actually a scholarly source, I actually recommend checking on Wikipedia. Valid academic sources typically have a Wikipedia page that describe the fact that it's peer-reviewed. Now, the downside with the scholarly sources, especially with English 102, is that you might not find sources that are directly tied to your topic. And so something to bear in mind is that it is completely okay to find an article that is a bit more tangential to your topic, maybe one that refers to an aspect of your topic, and then to use what you can from that to draw parallels with your topic. So for example, if you were going to write about the Fast and Furious movies, probably not going to find many academic articles on those, but you might find an academic article talking about action films from the 1960s and 1970s. You could use the points from that article about action films of the past to talk about whether or not you are seeing the same thing from action films of today, like Fast and the Furious. Remember too that a big part of your paper is sharing your own opinion, sharing your own thoughts. And so these parallels that you draw are an important part of the research process, an important part of your analysis for your writing. Now, when we're talking about finding these articles, remember you have two major options, all right? Google Scholar, of course, everyone is familiar with that. Also Heartland Library. I strongly recommend going to Heartland Library first for a couple main reasons. All right, the most important one is that Heartland Library is a reliable repository of solid scholarly peer-reviewed sources. Okay, you can, using that Search Anything database, you can check the box to make sure it's a peer-reviewed article. Like I said, 99% of the time, a peer-reviewed article from Heartland will be actually peer-reviewed, and you can count on that. Also, Heartland will give you the full text for your articles. This is a lot easier because you can just download that text right away, immediately start using it. Google Scholar, on the other hand, may give you articles that are locked behind a paywall. It may also give you articles that appear to be peer-reviewed, but are actually possibly vanity journals or not very reputable within their fields. Now, on the other hand, the shortcoming with Heartland Library is that it is limited. They don't have the budget and the massive public search engine that Google has. And so there's a very good chance that you will find more sources and sources that are more specific to your topic if you're using Google Scholar. And so if you do use Google Scholar and you do find an article that is locked behind a paywall, go to the librarians and they will actually purchase that article for you. Like I said, your tuition dollars pay for this. So this is an excellent resource to use. Now, the other thing to bear in mind with your articles, especially when we come down to citation, with Heartland Library, when you have that article in front of you, there is also a citation button. All right, when you click that button, Heartland Library will actually give you the works cited citations in MLA 9th edition, along with other citation styles such as APA or Chicago. This is hugely helpful and typically much more accurate than you're likely to get from, say, EasyBib or Noodle Tools. Now that said, as I mentioned in class, EasyBib, Noodle Tools, Purdue OWL's citation generator, those are perfectly okay to use as long as you're using them correctly. Just make sure that if you are trying to cite an article from Heartland Library, don't rely on that URL. All right, if you put that URL into EasyBib, it will give you a citation. It will not be accurate because EasyBib does not have access to EBSCO sources through Heartland Library. All right, so make sure that if you are using EasyBib or you are using Noodle Tools, that you're double checking that you have the author listed, you have the article listed, you have the actual publisher and the date you accessed it. Because as long as you're doing that, and as long as you have an accurate citation, I won't know whether you wrote it yourself or whether you used a citation generator. And to be honest, the method you used to get the citation is less important than the accuracy. So with that, I'm going to switch over and do the next recap on your presentations.